Hail, hail, the Celtics are here, and we're back for another episode of the flagship podcast. We are right in the middle of the summer transfer window, maybe the summer break. And this week I've got a special guest co-piloting the show with me this week. We've got Stephen over from the Endless Celts. Stephen, my man, good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Mate, it's a pleasure, mate. I've been watching the channel from afar, obviously, when I get a chance to. And Craig sent out the message to say if I wanted to come on and call me yourself, buddy. Quinny, you're a good man. Looking forward to a good chat about Celtic. And as you said, it's a weird time to be a Celtic supporter, obviously, with different emotions and things like that. But I'm sure we're going to get stuck right into it.
Yeah, definitely, mate. But it doesn't really feel like a summer break for now, does it? Like the sun is shining, but like we're not thinking about going and buying people in the summer and getting excited about who we could get in the group stages. It feels like we're still in it feels like we're under a cloud, doesn't it?
It does. If it's sun shining outside, it feels like there's a wee overcast cloud just over everyone's mind and brain at the minute. And even I think as well, like because people love Celtic so much, it affects them emotionally, affects them day to day, and with the ups and downs from winning the treble and then the down and leaving, you don't know how to feel. It's like you're in limbo and you don't know how to process it. I mean, we should be absolutely buzzing if we just won a world record 8th treble, but at the same time, we've lost the guy who led us to that amazing victory at Hampden over Inverness, and bittersweet, I would say, Quinny, very bittersweet at the minute.
Yeah, and yeah, you're definitely right, because we still should be in the aftermath of a treble party where we're celebrating and looking up and looking forward. And, you know, like the game itself, like, you know, it was a nice event. I think we were all just really watching the game to see what the manager would do after the game and what he would say around the game. Like, I don't think we were really that interested in what Inverness were up to and what Billy Dodds was saying or, you know, anything around that. And it was all about the manager post-match, and it was all about getting to Parkhead and he'll say something, and then that was the end of the show, kind of thing, you know.
I mean, for me, like I was over in Scotland with the guys from my podcast, and William, who's on the podcast, has a lovely wee bar, and he's converted into, and we were all in there having a great time. But in the back of our minds, as you said, there all you think about is the aftermath of what's going to happen. And I know we're going to come on to it stuff in detail, but it's almost it's like that feeling. Remember when Lenny got appointed after the treble in the showers? It's like a bit like that feeling. It's very reminiscent of that and the kind of flat aftertone of it. Obviously, the Saturday night, and we had a great time, and we were drinking beers on the barbecue, and we're all loving their lives. But you wake up on the Sunday, the Spurs rumours were getting intensified, and we all knew Postecoglou was going on holiday on the Tuesday, so only left the Monday open, and you're expecting the worst. Like, and again, as I said to you at the start of the show, it's bittersweet because you really want to be on that high and you want to enjoy the success of the club. But again, in the back of your mind, it's like the wee devil that's going, you're not going to enjoy this for too long.
No, big time. And it wasn't long at all, man. Like, and again, we were saying this before coming on, but it's like the time is absolutely dragged in, you know, days have became weeks, minutes have became hours, you know, transfer rumours have become sagas, you know, like over the last couple of days, odds have been slashed, betting's been suspended, and all sorts of things in between. And it's been absolutely mental. You know, the main thing I think is kind of circulating in the aftermath of the cup final, rather than it being like treble parties and whatever, is there's a lot of fans, and there's just a lot of different opinions and a lot of different dynamics going on with the manager leaving. Some people, I'm quite happy to wish him well. A lot of people are very upset with him and throwing him into the kind of the Rodgers bandwagon and for like leaving us high and dry, which I get, you know, to an extent. And then some other people are looking at John Kennedy now, he might be leaving, and then we're talking about all the other stuff that's moving around, you know. So there's a lot of mixed emotions, not just on losing a great manager, but so many other, like, what are the club going to do? Are the club actually fit to replace him? Did they just get lucky getting this guy in? You know, how do you feel about it all? You know,
I'm 50-50 with my feelings at the minute. Like you said there, Quinny, I want him to do well, but at the same time, I'm not going to watch him. I'm not going to watch Spurs. I'm not going to follow him like a supporter or kind of direct my attention to English football. I'm not a fan of English football. Everyone who knows what I say usually on my show, I'm not a big fan of it. But I mean, in terms of, I've obviously seen the comparisons to Rodgers, and what I would say, I mean, you can see it in a way. I mean, all the fist pumping and quoting Tommy Burns and kind of playing off the media saying there was someone favourite last week and that type of stuff. So for the Spurs job, which I'm referring to, and it's again, I don't categorize him in that type of personality as Rodgers. I think Postecoglou's more true to himself. he's a bit selfish. But again, he's no links to us. And I think people who were blindsided by the fact that we had Champions League football was totally wrong. Because at the end of the day, Spurs are going to treble his wages. He's going to get the chance to manage against Pep. He's going to get the chance to manage against Klopp and Ten Hag and all people like that and go to Etihad and being probably the best home stadium anyway in the Premier League. But with Spurs, they obviously redone it. So the pros and cons of it there is the way up. But a lot of our supporters, I think, as well, they kind of buy all this kind of, I love the club, or he played on the immigration stance and his family were like that. At the end of the day, like, people come in and do this all the time. Players do it all the time, and then when they get an offer, they're away. But Rodgers done it in a way where we knew he was a Celtic fan, but he told an awful lot of lies, which came out after about Danny McGrain and things like that. So a lot of these people come in and play up to the gallery, and they want. I mean, look at the season ticket thing as well. Celtic didn't offer an extension, that, so they must have knew in the background something's going on, and the support, I think, need to just relax a bit. Managers are going to come in. If we get a new manager next week and he comes in and says, I love the club, I get Celtic Football Club, that's enough for the majority to buy into that. Do you know what I mean? So, again, it's going to happen again. There's going to be another cycle where we're going to be loving the new manager. We're going to be loving what he's saying in the press. And it's one of these things. They're going to leave at the end of the day. And I was very certain about 4 weeks ago, Postecoglou was out the door. I could just feel it. I could see it. I think in his press conferences, he was a wee bit shady with his answers, where he's usually upfront. He's usually honest with us. That annoyed me a bit. I just thought he could have clarified the situation a lot more than he did. Even the club, there was no communication from the club. Spurs announced it before us, which I thought was a bit embarrassing. But yeah, I think we just need to take a chill pill. We've experienced this under Rodgers. Maybe, obviously, he left mid-season, but I know we're probably going to end it as well. I think if Postecoglou had that offer on the table, I think he'd be away mid-season too.
Well, do you know, I actually think there's a strong possibility that he could have left sooner and didn't, like with Spurs, because Spurs have been quite strung out for a manager. They have been losing position. Yeah, they didn't finish in Europe. They were in pole position to finish top four, and they were in free fall with an assistant manager and then nobody, basically. So,
yeah,
I'm going to give the big man the benefit on that. It's something I've thought to bring up, but it's something that has occurred to me before. But because, I make you right. See, as soon as the links came out, my first thought was he'll go, because when Brendan Rodgers left for Leicester, I shit you not, the words that came out of my mouth was, I could understand if it was Spurs, like when it was Leicester. Now, that was like genuinely, like if it was Spurs.
See on that, Quinny. I don't mean to cut you off there, but I was at the Motherwell game when Rodgers' last game that it turned out to be, and I got a text on my phone while I was at it by my mate saying, I think it was Claude Puel was the Leicester manager at the time, and he got sacked. Text my mate back going, he's away. I could just feel it. And then 2 days later, he had the Leicester club suit on, and he was gone. And obviously, them negotiations take time, and I'm not naive to believe that he was in contract talks maybe for a couple of weeks before Claude Puel was eventually sacked. But you made a great point in regards to the Spurs manager, Conte, to start with, and then to put his assistant in charge. It didn't work out again. I don't understand the move they tried to make there, to be honest. Then they brought in Ryan Mason, who, by all accounts, is a good up-and-coming coach. Obviously, he had to end his career quite early.
He's John Kennedy.
Yeah, he's John Kennedy. But then the fact is as well, I mean, another gripe I have is the Feyenoord manager rejected Spurs. Do you know what I mean? We're a bigger club than Feyenoord. So I don't understand why Postecoglou couldn't maybe look at it that way and be like, for my career, they have a bit of a sketchy record with high-profile managers. Why would that change with me? But again, you counter that by going, he's ambitious and he believes in his own ability as a manager. But yeah, the whole saga, the whole, as you said at the start of the show, the whole thing was crazy at points, and Celtic supporters arguing with each other and getting on each other's backs when we shouldn't have done that. But at the end of the day, we all love Postecoglou. Do you know what I mean? We bought into him, and as I said the other, we're fickle that way. Do you know what I mean? If anyone says anything good about Celtic, we're like, sign him up or get him in. That's the way it is. Yeah, that's it. You just have to come in and say one quote from a Jock Stein or a Tommy Burns, and it's in the palm of your hand. And Postecoglou, to give credit to him, he knew that. He knew that 100%. And I think we were just a wee bit naive to believe he'd be with us for 4 or 5 years. This to me was a cycle that was coming to an end. I would have said next season would have been his last season anyway if he had stayed in charge. He's left a year early, and we'll see where that takes us.
I would definitely think that he's been genuine in a lot of the stuff. Like, I do think he's fell in love with the club, if nothing else. Like maybe any foregone, like watching and the stuff you referenced earlier. Fair enough, right? But like I can, I can definitely imagine it being a bit. I made a joke somewhere before, but like I can imagine this being like Tottenham phone him up and he's like, Tottenham's on the phone. I tell him I'll do it for like treble my wages, like, and then they go, all right, no bother, and then he's like, oh, they said aye, because like I think really like I think Tottenham have probably had them lined up for a while, right? As has been reported, but they have tried to, so I think he said I'll only go end of the season, and they've probably went cool. We'll just keep that on ice. Can we get Julian Nagelsmann? Can we go and get Graham Potter? Can we go and get this guy? Can we go and get that guy? Because this guy's on ice, Postecoglou. We'll get him end of season anyway. But can we go and get somebody else? No, we can't. Right, well, Postecoglou's coming. And I think him maybe holding out to the end of the season, I wouldn't rule it out if it came out in the fullness of time. Maybe that happened.
Well, it was a bit suspicious that it was a bit suspicious that his agent was present, wasn't it? Frank Tambole, I think his name is. And obviously there's rumours going around the Twitter sphere that he was pushing this for months. And obviously they appointed a new director of football, Scott Munn, who's worked with Postecoglou before. So there's two links there. Do you know what I mean? And I know for a fact, from what I've been reading, the guy on The Athletic, I can't quite remember his name, but he gets most of the Spurs news correct. And he said that, who is it?
Ornstein,
yeah, that's the guy. And apparently all them have a close relationship, and he confirmed that. So, as you said, maybe Postecoglou give him the green light for the end of the season. They've tried their hand at trying to get Nagelsmann in and maybe getting a higher profile manager to appease their support. But at the end of the day, they're a basket case of a club, and the majority of the gaffers have contacted said no, but ours didn't.
Yeah, that's it. So, yeah, ultimately, I wish the big man well. I hope he does all right because I like him. I think he's a good guy. I think he's, and if I could be candid with you as well, like, see for me, see the thing that I love football, right? And see the thing that I really do love about football more than anything is that you can be some guy called Ange Postecoglou in Australia, and see if you work hard enough, you could get to the Premier League, you could get to the World Cup. You could be born in Liberia and then become the president of the bloody country afterwards if you're that good at football. You know what I mean? That's what football does. But you know what I mean? Like, mate, let's be real about it. There's wars on, there's a virus, everyone's getting locked in their house, but we're still playing football. It doesn't matter. Football makes the world go round, and it's like, and I love Messi and all the rest of it, but it's all about, it doesn't matter where you are. If you are that guy, you will rise. No one's going to stop you. And there's these old jokes that go around as well, like Premier League clubs would hire Saddam Hussein to avoid relegation, and whatever. Like, that's the way football is. You don't care who you are. Can you win a football match? You're playing.
Come in. I think as well, like, football's a story, isn't it? It's as you said, there, Postecoglou came from Greek origins. His family left to go to Australia. He tried, I think it was a right back in South Melbourne. Puskas came in and obviously he learned a lot from him. He was manager, and then he worked his way up from there. We also have to understand he had a field time in Europe with a Greek third division team. So at that time it was looking bleak, but he dusted himself down and he came back again. He came back stronger, and as he quotes himself, he never stopped, and he's never going to stop. And there's nothing wrong with harbouring ambitions, Quinny, not at all. I think that, as you said there, if you look at like Henrik Larsson, he ended up winning the Champions League at 35. He went to United at 37. So, I mean, there's ways and means of improving yourself. And Postecoglou, if you look at the age thing, which is probably wrong to be fair, but he was 57. Would this come round again? You never know. And he's setting his family up for life. He's two young kids who ran onto that pitch with his wife. And if you're honest, if the Spurs manager's getting £16 million a year, he signed a 4-year contract. If he gets the worst, that gets his contract terminated, that's a wee payout for him. He can go back to Australia with his feet up and a wee sangria on the sand with his wife and kids. So there's a way to look at it. We have to look at it. He didn't have a connection with us. He said fairly early on, these people referring to players and himself and different managers, they're vessels just passing through. The support remain at Celtic Football Club. Celtic Football Club goes on regardless. Doesn't stop. It doesn't turn the lights off. If Postecoglou leaves, they get switched back on again and we go again. And as you said, I wish him well, but I'll be paying no attention to the EPL, none whatsoever. So in that essence, I don't care. But the big man, I do like him. But as I said at the start of the show, there's some things, in my opinion, he wasn't really honest about.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely in agreement with you there. And like Celtic, what you've said there, I think it probably takes us on really well. That's kind of what I got out the Tommy Burns quote, is that he's trying to tell us, like, I'm out of here, but you guys are really the thing, not me, kind of thing. So, I'm a wee bit torn and twisted on some of it, but it does lead us on
Do you think
to
it was
another.
wrong? Do you think it was wrong for him to quote Tommy Burns, especially knowing in the back of his mind he was leaving?
I think if he could do it again, he wouldn't do it. Clearly,
Yeah.
like, I think it's definitely been a divisive thing that I probably thought he would talk our language to us, like and I'm trying to translate it basically as I'm sitting here talking now.
It's a
But
good way of thinking. I actually never thought of that, to be honest with you. It sounds like, as you said there, he's saying to us, we're here, but I'm Oski. I never actually thought about that, so that's a good way to think about it.
Yeah. I don't think I did before the now either, really, to be honest. It was just podcasting goes. He talked to people and great things come out,
Oh, mate. Creative minds and all that.
The Daily Record have given us 14 names to talk to great people about. I've been doing my best to talk to as many people about as many managers as could possibly be at this point. I'm sure you're the same. I don't think any Celtic fan is any different at this point. The main one that keeps having me twisted up the same way I'm kind of the now talking about Ange and whatever is kind of the favourite, non-favourite is Brendan. How do you feel about the Brendan links or the return of Brendan in general? Will it happen?
I mean, the return of Zorro, eh? But I think like with Brendan Rodgers, it's one of these things where you have to put this into context, right? Yes, what he done was a bad move, but you look at it from the other side of a coin. He left us in a great position in the league. We were in a cup semi-final, and all it really needed was guidance to get that over the line. For many years, I mean, I was at his event. I live in Belfast, so I was at his event in the waterfront when he told that Danny McGrain story, and that sticks in my mind an awful lot because that's been lies since we know. But he's an ego man, and at the end of the day, at Leicester, he finished fifth twice. He won an FA Cup, got them into European football, done quite well. Obviously, the last season there, I think his transfers were wrong because he wasn't getting money. It took them ages to sign a centre half, so there was different things that got on in the background in that aspect of things. And maybe he was handcuffed like he was at Celtic with the transfer budgets. But I just think I would take him back. I would take him back because I know for a fact as well, if in 2 or 3 years' time, if Postecoglou was available, we'd be saying take him back. And there's people angry with Postecoglou. Yeah, what Brendan Rodgers done was wrong, and the way he did it was wrong. But at the end of the day, he's probably one or two of the best available managers we could attract. There'd be a lot of stuff that would need to be ironed out between Desmond and Lawwell and whoever was there at that time in the background between. I've no doubts about that because you seen towards the end of his time, we were signing Marion Sved. He didn't have a clue who he was. We were signing all these random players like Malumbu, and it wasn't quite what he wanted. And he made that perfectly clear. So we'll have to understand there was reasons why he left the club. He wanted a transfer budget to compete in certain levels of European football, and he wasn't getting it. I think what's different between then and now is we're projected to reach about £112 million in turnover. We've got £50 million in the bank. That's before the new Champions League money comes in. Obviously, no players' wages come out of that and things. But again, if it's reported, we've received £5 million compensation for Postecoglou, so there's money coming into the bank there. I would say maybe we could back him a bit more, give him a bit more room in the transfer market. And I think the recruitment policy at Celtic's changed. Obviously, with Mark Lawwell coming in, working close with the CFG group, and then you've got the couple of scouts he brought in, and the analysis that Postecoglou brought in from Benfica very early on to kind of do the team analysis of things like that. So there's a lot of things that's changed in the background, and also you've seen today Stephen Hamill coming in as a head of coaching, a new role that apparently the SPFL has wanted to be implemented in all professional clubs. So there's different things happening in the background. Rodgers, it's all dependent on him. If he's interested, if he wants another crack at it, then that's fair enough. I think his reputation, I don't think it's took any damage from Leicester. I think he literally took them as far as he could. Other teams in that league strengthened. Arsenal got better. Spurs were kind of in between as a yo-yo. You look at even West Ham, they were up 7-6 under Moyes, and then obviously Man City's reached another level, so you're not going to compete with them in terms of trying to get up there in top four. United's come back into form under Ten Hag. So what he done at Leicester was a good achievement for them, and they won the league obviously under Ranieri, but that was a freak season. A lot of them big clubs were rebuilding. A lot of their big players were performing due to various reasons wanting transfers out of them for more money, if even you can dare ask for that being in the Premier League. But yeah, I would take Brendan Rodgers back. Again, it plays into the whole fickle support type thing. Do you know what I mean? We all like to believe that. I always hear that analogy about you're trying to describe your glamorous ex and make an excuse to go back there. But at the end of the day, Rodgers is a good football coach. He's a high profile name, and I think he would put Michael B to the sword. That wee man has non-stop run his mouth since he's come into Sevco or Rangers Football Club, and I just think for me he needs brung down a couple of levels. And yeah, I think Rodgers would do a job. There's no doubt in my mind he would win another treble quite easily. No doubt. What's your opinion, Quinny?
Well, I like Rodgers, but see, for me, mate, see that time, like, I don't know. I think when he won the FA Cup, I kind of felt a wee bit. I felt a wee bit for him when he won the FA Cup. I thought, oh, well done to you, Brendan. Right, fair play to you on that one. But see, looking back at it now, like, he did throw 10 in a row away for me. He threw it away by leaving to go and win the FA Cup now and finish 8th twice and then almost get relegated. That's what he left for, really. You know what I mean? So I find that really, like, I'm sure he'll come, if he comes back, I'm sure he'll win 2 or 3 games and I'll be quite happy enough outwardly. But inwardly, deep in my soul, I'm going to say it now, this will be burning. He would need to stay for 8 seasons. We've just won 2, haven't we? He would need to stay for 8 seasons for this little bit of my soul to be repaired.
I seen a wee clip today on Twitter, Quinny. You mentioned 10 in a row. There was this wee boy in the corridors of Celtic Park, and he went up to Brendan, and he was like 10 or something. He goes, "You going to be here for 10 in a row?" And Brendan looked at him, "Do you want me to be?" And he just nodded his head and he walked away. So again, like, we don't know what Postecoglou is going to do at Spurs here, right? He could finish 8th twice. He could bring them towards relegation. You don't know this. You can't control what's going to happen. I mean, that league's mental. Do you know what I mean?
I'm being fickle here. I'm being definitely selfish on this one. That's my personal emotions. You know, I'm not hiding that.
Leicester at the time.
Not the views of anyone.
Leicester at the time, you have to remember, Quinny, as well. They just won the league 2 years previous, so they were riding a crest there. And I mean, their squad, they had Jamie Vardy, Tielemans he brought in, and players like that. He signed the right back that he wanted for Celtic for them. So do you know what I mean? There was definitely some gravitas in that form to get more spending power. I think what the major thing is with Rodgers. I know I'm on. I don't know why here, but I'm usually not on the bandwagon. But I'm on it tonight for Rodgers or this evening. I look at it and I think, out of all of them, I know we're going to discuss names. He's the most talented. He's done it. He's been there. He's wore the T-shirt. He'll come in again, and I think it'll be a masterstroke if the media team let the fans do the press conference first. Imagine that would be some meat and bones press conference there, like with Brendan Rodgers. There had to be some home truths fairly flung at him.
Wow. Can you imagine that, eh? Jesus. Well, I think that's quite irrefutable. He's definitely, of all the candidates, he's the one with the T-shirt on. There's no two way. He's still got that quadruple treble T-shirt on, you know, underneath his shirt. No two ways about it. So you cannot argue with that. But I think where a lot of the fear or a lot of the anger is, you know, from Celtic fans I talk to, interact with, and see on interwebs and whatever, I think it all really comes down to this kind of core worry that we've got, that the board are going to go and give it to some guy from Mumbai that we've never heard of before, or they're going to do something that is like Lenny in the shower material, or, you know, whatever. They're going to do something highly unambitious and highly biscuit tinny, you know, kind of vibes. That's what we're really all kind of worried about, more than, and maybe Rodgers is like a sign of that in a way, because it's just an easy get for the board, because they don't have anything outside of that, and it's maybe another just patch job on a bigger problem that's kind of underlying, perhaps. So it's, you know, my view on it is very personal, very emotional on it, but I think maybe that's a little part of it, maybe going around there as well, because you mentioned it already. There might need to be some sit downs with some of these people, because it might have been quite hairy when ways were parted. But out of the names that are linked, the only one I remember when Brendan was first linked to Celtic for the first stint, and as soon as he was linked as like 5th choice, or not 5th choice, but 5th likely or whatever, straight away I was fixated on him. He's the man. He's got to be the one that we get. Never going to happen, but because that's just never the way Celtic do things. And oh my God, can't believe we done it. We got him. The only candidate I kind of feel that way potentially about is Graham Potter. I think Graham Potter, but is probably going to be crazily expensive to get out of whatever. You know, he's just had his contract terminated from Chelsea and Brighton. You know, he's got a lot of money probably due to him, and there's probably legal complications around when he can take a job and what leagues he can play in and stuff. Maybe our league actually works in that sense, might be a benefit. Who am I to say? But like, I think Potter is like what Brendan was before as well. Like, is that up and coming coach that almost got to like the pinnacle of English football, and then like it just wasn't maybe the right place at the right time, or it didn't quite. In Rodgers' case, it was just, I think it was that close to winning the league, but I think with Potter, he just shouldn't have went to Chelsea. He probably should have went to Spurs. He should have stayed at Brighton until probably Spurs came up, and that would have probably been a much better time for everyone. We'd still have Ange probably. I don't think he'd have went to Chelsea. You know,
I think with Graham Potter, it's the redemption angle, isn't it? It's trying to prove themselves again, and they'll be hungry to do that. The thing with Graham Potter that excites me, I'm glad you've rung his name up. It's not quite that he got the Chelsea job, but it's the journey to the Chelsea job. With his team in Sweden, Östersunds, he took them from literally the back end of nowhere in Swedish football up to the top and winning fifth division up to the top league, and then they beat Arsenal, I think, in the Europa League. So he's got gravitas and he's got quality that way. And he went to Swansea and then he got his move to Brighton. And I know people are saying De Zerbi has took Brighton on to another level from Graham Potter, which is fair enough. But you have to understand, it's most of Graham Potter's players still there. So he has an eye for a player. And your wee man in midfield, Casado, I think he got him for peanuts, and he's getting sold to, I think it's Arsenal maybe, for like 80 million quid. Do you know what I mean? And it just shows you he's got an eye for a player, and that's what we loved about Postecoglou. It was his eye for talent that no one's ever heard of before. And I mean, in that Brighton team, he has Mimitao, the other Japanese player who Celtic were after. So he knows them leagues, Quinny. He knows the J League. He wouldn't be signing players in the J League if he didn't know them quite well. And he knows how to put a team together. And I like his formation. I like the variance of the 3-5-2. He plays like a 3-5, like attacking midfielder, 3-4-1-2, or he plays the two up front. Obviously, wing-back system, which might suit Maeda down to the ground, kind of bombed up down that left-hand side, and Kyogo having the partner finally, which we've been crying out for ages. But he's an exciting man. What I didn't like about Chelsea was the amount of abuse he got. People are saying he changed, but and I seen a clip of him at a fan media type press conference thing, and it was in like a supporters club. And he was trying so hard to fit in with what they were doing. He started to say curse words and things just to get a cheer from the crowd and stuff. But Graham Potter's not that. He's an intellectual man who thinks. And I mean, you don't beat Arsenal with a Swedish minnow team if you don't have something about them. That's something we haven't managed in a good couple of years in European football. So I have no doubt if he came in, he would do a fantastic job. But as you said, compensation wise, what would we have to pay to get him out of the garden leave contracts he's under with Chelsea and Brighton? And then it's himself. Does he want to come back in that very early on after a tough stint at Chelsea? And another thing that went against him, which people don't seem to understand as well, he didn't have control over the transfers. Chelsea were bringing in Mudryk. They were bringing in all these talents, Enzo Fernandez, and it's Enzo Fernandez, isn't it? They were bringing in players like that. And I don't think Potter necessarily wanted them. He was handed them players by Ted Bowley to kind of fit into that system. Where if I think he had full control of Chelsea Football Club, he would have done a far better job. And it's kind of like the Liverpool thing with Rodgers. They have that famous transfer committee. They get the final say, and that goes against you in a way. And if you look at Frank Lampard, he came in and lost most of the games he was in charge of Chelsea after he left. So Graham Potter's not a man to be sniffed at. And for me, it's the redemption angle. Does he want to fight? Does he want to come back and kind of earn his reputation again? I'm gonna have to get really, really comfy with the idea that Celtic are a stepping stone club. We are managers coming from Europe. I know you're going to chirp. I know you're going to say that managers coming in from Europe, in my opinion, are looking at us now as a 2 to 3 year window if they do well on a more attractive league. And that's the way players do it. We have to get used to this. We're not going to compete with wages in England. And I've seen something saying in the English Championship, £100,000 a week is going to become a base wage in some clubs. That's going to wipe us out of the water even more in the English transfer market. So we'll have to get used to this fact. And I'm quite comfy with it. If we get entertaining football for 2 or 3 years and we're winning trophies for 2 to 3 years, as long as we're keeping the other side out, happy.
Yeah. I don't mind it as long as they go to the top of football from here.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's our good players. We want to see them get like not that we want to. We don't want to see them ever leave, but when they're leaving, we want them to go somewhere cool. We want them to go to the top. We want to see them in finals of the Champions League and winning other stuff. And we go.
Yeah.
He played for us. He learned that in Glasgow. He learned that playing Champions League for the Hoops. That's what
Van
we all
Dijk.
do. You know what I mean? But I would do it. Van Dijk's a perfect example.
Yeah.
Even yeah, exactly. So, like, I don't mind that, but and like I said earlier, kind of maybe how this all kind of came on, but like when Rodgers left us for Leicester, I did say at the time I could take it if it was Spurs because, like, if it's the very top of the table, right, and that seems ironic now coming back to it. I'm only remembering this talking to you today, but like, it is the top of the table for him going there, and that is a great. It's fine. It's kind of great in a sense that we're starting to complete that part of the food chain. And we're starting to feed into the absolute top. They're not going to Southampton, then Liverpool. They're not going to, other guys that have went all over the place. Like Dembele's free now from Lyon, so he couldn't go.
Yeah, I think one of the perfect examples, Quinny, is you look at the Red Bull examples, right? So they usually have a manager starts at Salzburg, do well to go to Leipzig, and if they do well, they go to Bayern. So that's the type of path I see us at the minute. And you're right. If I was an up-and-coming European manager and I'm going, where should I go next? If Celtic come knocking, you look at where the managers went after they left Celtic. So Postecoglou has went to the top six club in England, which never would have happened before. I mean, Lenny left us for Bolton. Do you know what I mean? A lot of things have changed since 2014. Can you imagine saying that right now? Someone's left Celtic to go to Bolton. It's shambolic that even happened. But even if you look at Rodgers, in a way, Quinny, he left for a Premier League team that just won the league 2 years previous. So there's a track record there now that we're starting to earn, and we're starting to the reputation for young and up and coming managers. I think would be a stepping stone. And I know people won't like me saying that, but it's true. Get comfy with that term. That's what we are now. And if a manager comes in, that would be the next move they're looking to make in their career.
Yeah. But again, it's like, the advancements UEFA have got now with the Champions League. The format's changing next season. I don't know enough about it to really get into it. It's probably a conversation for another day anyway. But those are the horizons that we should be tackling. And like for us to properly, we should want the ambition of having the best people in the club possible, right? Mm-hmm. Now, we're never going to be able to, the best players in the world, and when they're the best at football, they are going to be aged between, let's just say, typically 25 and 31, and they're going to want six-figure wages per week. Well, those people are just never, ever on the table for us, So you're then looking outside of that in terms of the wage bracket and probably the age range as well. And if you're thinking about that from the player perspective, you're dead right. You need that for the managers as well, because as we've seen with this, John Kennedy's leaving, Strachan's leaving, and I know that we should be shedding tears over that, right? But they're meant to be our staff. They're meant to be our guys. They've been there. They've got the keys. They know the PIN code to open the car park in the morning. Like they're part of the club. The infrastructure, as it were. And like when you take those people out, like it offers you a good opportunity, of course, but it makes it extremely hard for there to be continuity on that Red Bull scale that you're discussing. Because those managers are all pieces, like the manager. Yeah. If you go from Salzburg to Leipzig, you don't take 5 coaches. You just move.
No.
You kind of vibes. You're just a coach.
I don't agree with you in that stance. I think John Kennedy and Gavin Strachan have ran their course at Celtic. I really do. John Kennedy's he's well renowned as a great football coach, but for me, that's all he's ever going to be at us. Maybe he needs to go somewhere and spread his wings, and maybe Spurs is that perfect opportunity. I look at Gavin Strachan. He only got a pass because Postecoglou done so well in his first 2 seasons. Otherwise, he'll be still the laptop man. Do you know what I mean? He'll be the guy who all the abuse would be aimed at. So I get what you mean by continuity, but what you have to remember is continuity is a number of things. It's the boardroom. It's the majority shareholder. It's the de facto director of football and Mark Lawwell. You're coming in, you still have Stevie Woods, Tim Williamson doing the physio. And you obviously have the legends going about the club like John Park and still involved in some capacity, Tom Boyd as an ambassador. So the continuity side of things for me is grand, right? If this gives a coach coming in a chance to bring in a first-team coach and an assistant, I'm all for it. I mean, you look at the guy as well. I'm probably going to butcher his name, so I apologise. Areola, he was the manager of Rio Vallecano, and I think he beat Real Madrid and Barcelona last season in the Liga. They punched above their weight for 3 seasons under his stewardship. That's a name that excites me too. It's thinking outside the box. It's not going for the Steve Clark or the Davy Moyes, the lazy names, as you said, Quinny, like Rodgers might be that first pick out of the dusty shelf where Peter Lawwell used to keep his contacts. So you have to be aware of that. Sometimes a new idea, a new, fresh implement of style is good. And if you bring in your own team, that's grand. We looked at Eddie Howe, right? Fair enough. That fell flat. He wanted to bring his mates with him. But look at the job he's doing with his mates at Newcastle. Do you know what I mean? They turned that club around, and I know the money's come into it, but he hasn't really spent an awful lot of money. He's done that with like Dan Burnett left back and Longstaff still featuring Colin Wilson up front. So it's not a star-studded team. He's done that just by pure coaching and pure style of play with his backroom staff that he's comfortable with. So I think the likes of Areola, if the rumours are led to believe he's going to apply for the job, if he's willing to take 2 or 3 people with him, be open to the idea. I don't understand why we need Kennedy around still. Or
I think there's space for both. Like I think you can.
How big do you want the bench to be?
As big as it needs to be, mate. Honestly, if you look at elite football now, it's big benches everywhere. It's about 40 seats in those buckets. But I think I don't begrudge Kennedy the career opportunity. Right? 'Cause I think Kennedy was obviously robbed due to injury of a football career, right? So I don't begrudge the guy having a coaching career, taking an opportunity to get a pal. He's finally got a pal that can take him on a job. Because that's the way football works. If you don't know people, you don't get jobs. But he's finally got somebody that he's proper got a good connection with, and he's taking them on. Don't grudge him, the person, the opportunity, if that makes sense. Or even Strachan, I'd probably put him in that boat. But I firmly mean Kennedy, because Kennedy's solid. He's one of us. But like for the club, there is the opportunity for a new kind of thing to come in, right? But I think there's always the opportunity, because I see it in clubs all across Europe and stuff like that. You normally have the kind of entourage. Like if Rodgers comes back, he brings in Chris Davies and he brings in 1 or 2
Well,
other guys.
he might not, by the way, because he's been linked to Spurs.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yep. Today he's been linked with Spurs. That might be led to believe that John Kennedy might not be going anywhere if Postecoglou gets Chris Davies in. So that's one to keep an eye on. But I get what you're saying.
Okay, fair enough. But I think at most clubs, you just listen to Stevie Woods and Timmy Williamson, great stalwarts and servants to the club. And again, Timmy Williamson left for a while, went to Birmingham, came back, no big shakes. That's cool. John Kennedy could do the same for all I care. No big shakes. Gavin Strachan, whatever. Who cares, really? But the club, I think we should always have room for now. I think we'll be leaning quite heavily on O'Day and McManus, who I think have maybe been forgotten in this dynamic of it all. They've been firm B team kind of champions, as it were. So maybe we see 1 or 2 of them, maybe be the Kennedy of new, perhaps, which could be cool. But I do think that then that there has to be a wee bit of that proactiveness, because if we do want to have, we're our own little, we're not really in the City football group, but we're bloody well a de facto state or something at this point, or
I don't like it.
I guess pass, I love it, to be quite honest with you. I'll tell you one reason. I'll tell you one reason I love it more than anything, right? I've supported Man City for a long time when they were rubbish, right? I didn't like Man United.
You had to get that in there.
It's a story for another day, right? But Man City, for me, see if you look at our business, they're our pals, man. What have they done? All they do is give us cool players and lend us stuff, and what do we ever really give them? Really, what do we ever really? What do they get out of it? I don't think it's very much. No. And the final thing I'll say on it is they're the east of Manchester. We're the east of Glasgow. And they're in a European Cup final, looking to win their first European Cup against Inter Milan. How poetic is that?
It is.
They're our big rich pals, right?
It is. It's fitting. It's the way you're saying that makes it sound poetic, Connie. Let's be fair here. I just think Celtic should be known as a standalone identity in football. That's why I look at it. Yeah, you can have contacts within clubs, but see the CFG group, they're banned Mumbai and Melbourne City in Australia. They're not going to buy us. I know we've got contacts and stuff inside it, which is great to have. But at the end of the day, we're Celtic Football Club. We should be able to attract players by ourselves and managers by ourselves. And you said there quite funnily, what do they get out of it? I can tell you what they get out of it. Nuisance phone calls from Mark Lowell and Peter asking who can they appoint or bring in as a director of football or a manager of the club. And see, to be fair with you, See, to be fair, see the players we've had, Roberts, you've had Gudetti, you've had Denier, Oliver Incham as well. They've 100% they've loaned us some cracking players. We've signed a few of them on permanent contracts as well. I like the links, but I don't like people saying we're a de facto City club when in my opinion, we're a bigger club than Manchester City. We're outweighing them support wise. The only thing bigger about Manchester City is financially. That's it. And as you said, you supported them when they were quote unquote rubbish. I don't know much about them, obviously, from back in that time. But they've only come on to a game since they've got their rich owners and from the Saudis, and they're signing all these world class players. And see, to be fair to Pep, I have to be honest with you, he hasn't really spent the over 100 million that much. He's got like players in De Bruyne, Gundogan, Haaland at 60 million quid. So in that essence, he's shopped quite well. But Celtic, Quinny, are a standalone team, and
Yeah.
they should be able to do it on their own.
Yeah, we're definitely not going to become City, Glasgow, Celtic, or something like that. Definitely not. I'm definitely with you on that. But I think like what it should do for us, and I think the club has made some like feeble attempts at this already, but it should give you the insight to make that infrastructure with the kind of roots that we do have as a club. And you see the kind of, and I say feeble with all due respects, I don't really know what they do, but into North America and into Ireland and stuff, like Celtic should have plumbed in infrastructure where talent just comes across, because that's where our roots are, where our fans are, where, you know, our history is. And, you know, we're maybe now getting a wee bit of that with Japan, but that's highly manufactured through the Nakamura situation all the way through to the present day. Really, beyond that, you know, it's not anything else.
I think as well, Quinny, I think Dermot Desmond's, I think he's a majority shareholder in Shamrock Rovers, or he's ploughed money into that club. So maybe they're trying to make a feeder club in that. But I do agree with you. You look at the League of Ireland, and Celtic should be somewhere in there, maybe with a feeder club, not under the Celtic banner, but someone you could kind of hoover the talent up and bring them over and see. Yeah,
like
to see how they go on.
They get the kids and they get loans, or if you sign for them, or maybe Celtic will look at you. You know,
Yeah,
like
100%. And then you said North America. I mean, I'm not really clued up in the teams in that kind of in that area, but there's obviously ways and means to create feeder clubs. I know they do the soccer schools, and maybe that's the way to get into it and stuff. So the infrastructure needs to be improved. I think we all know this. You look at clubs all around the world, even in Belgium. I mean, most of that league are feeder clubs in these teams. I mean, Royal Antwerp, United, and like Ghent and things like that, and they're all feeder clubs of some sort of big club in Europe. So why can we not get involved and get a piece of that pie? I'm pretty sure it's not hard to create a link and create a player revolving door type system where you said we can send the likes of Maggie Johnson to keep an eye on them, and we can take their youth talent to see if they can make the grade at us. So there's a win-win there for both sides.
Yeah, for sure, man. So I think like we definitely, you know, I think that's the only way the CFG links kind of dampen down is when we become self-sufficient. It feels like, let's say we've got a rich pal and we can use his car and we can party in his house and, you know, like, you know, whatever else. He leaves the credit card on the dinner table when he goes out to work. You know, like that's the kind of pal we've got. That's the way it feels like, you know, but the only way for fans that don't like it, you know, like yourself, and I get the identity part and I'm all about that, by the way, you know, hoops all the way and everything else. But Celtic really should have the ambitions to be its own kind of entity in that sense, because that's the way modern global football is going. CFG and Red Bull really are the two like leaders and the main players, but there's a couple other people having a shot at it. Brighton, by the way, if anyone isn't aware, like Brighton are basically doing that with that team that put out Rangers, United Saint Gillois, USG, Belgium.
Yes.
And that's where Matoma and that see like three of that Brighton team. They started off at that team in Belgium. And what's Belgium football got going for it, really, in terms of like standard of league and you can't develop players at this level and you can't attract players like USG, they were called. Nobody's ever heard of them in their life. And they were able to sign players and put them in there with the promise of going to Brighton if they were good enough, or they would get farmed around Europe, if you get me.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's Brighton that are initiating that. They're finding a wee team in Belgium and going, right, see you in the second division. We're going to buy you and then we're going to do this. I'm not saying we need to do that and be a mad capitalist club or anything, but like, you know, that's
it's a way in.
We should be.
It's a way in.
You mentioned Andoni Iraola. Now he is probably, you know, I mentioned the funny feeling about Potter, right? I'd really like us to get him. Now it came out on Twitter Wednesday. Iraola is applied for the job. I don't know if you've seen this yourself, but he has like actively submitted his application to it. He's out of contract in the summer. He managed Vallecano, punched above their weight for a few years. I watched them, you know, I watch a fair bit of La Liga, right? And, you know, we can talk about that if you like. Decent guy, good reputation. Everyone kind of rates him. I think if he's applying to the job, like I've got a sneaky feeling he might. When I seen that go out, that he's made an active application. I don't really remember that happening too often with these jobs at Celtic that
Uh,
often. It's normally us going to people and trying to get them to
yeah.
answer the phone and respond to emails and stuff. So he's got a really good reputation, and with the board's like mindset, Iraola knocked back Southampton and Leeds in January because he wanted to see his contract out and see if he could get Vallecano into Europe. They just missed out.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if Premier League comes of Colin, if the club have got any wits about them, they'll just put him on a 4-year contract with a buyout fee for a Premier League club and just wait until they start getting sacking managers down there again.
I think with the likes of Areola, like I don't watch the Liga much, Quinny. I just know reading about him and stuff like that. So I'm not going to pretend I'm the Liga expert. But one thing about him is he obviously rejected the advances of Southampton and Leeds. I think that was pretty well covered in January, February time when they were going through a bit of turmoil of their own. He wanted to see out his contract, so there's a loyalty aspect with Rio Vallecano. So, I mean, he could have jumped ship. And this is what I was saying, like, we can't keep going back to the same old names and the dusty shelf of the likes of Moyes and all again. Park that to one side. I would hope Mark Lawwell would have enough wits about him and be like, we'll interview him. We'll bring him in. We'll sit him down with Dermot Desmond in London, where he likes to do interviews, and let him see what his football vision is for us. And I think as well, for a guy like Areola to be interested in the job off the bat without us approaching him is a sign of that kind of link of the stepping stone. He's looking, going, Postecoglou's went to Spurs after 2 years. 2 or 3 years, if I do a good job, I could come back to an Atletico Madrid if Diego Simeone leaves, or you go to Napoli, you could go to Dortmund. Do you know what I mean? So instead of thinking about England, he could be thinking about going back into European football after 2 to 3 years. So there's different ways of looking at this. I would get him in 100%. Obviously, he's seen the rumours that he was applying. If it's Neil Bonney's applied, you'd be interviewing him until you're blue in the face. Bring him in, and as you said, they punched above their weight in a very tough La Liga league, and yeah, you have to respect him for doing this. I mean, like he could have waited. He could wait for a mid-table club somewhere in France or Italy, maybe get a bigger pay packet. But if he's interested in coming to us, by all means. And you look at the other names as well, Quinny. Knutson, Bodo Glimt, manager. He outsmarted Postecoglou in 2 games. A lot of fans are pinning their hopes in that. But again, Knutson to me gets my blood pumping a bit. To be fair, it's quite a similar start that he had it with Potter, who went to Ostersunds, brought them from the 5th division. He's brought Bodo Glimt up from the 2nd tier in Norway. He's won back-to-back league titles. He's been in the latter stages of a Conference League or Europa League at some points in that run as well. So you have to kind of take that under consideration. Do you remember Solbakken that played for him? He absolutely ripped us apart. He was a cracking player. And I was reading today, his biggest, or was it Areola? I can't remember. But one of their biggest outlays was £2.2 million on a player. And I think that's fantastic. And if the likes of Areola and Knutson can do that, we all know the budget at Celtic's not going to stretch to millions and millions of pounds. Come in and do it. I don't see no reason why not we can't appoint these guys. I think we're in a good position to.
Yeah.
We don't need a safe pair of hands, right? We don't need a Sam Allardyce, which I've seen people speak about. We don't need a Gordon Strachan for a year to steady the ship. We're in the best position we've been in years. We're attractive. We've got money in the bank. We've got guaranteed Champions League football, and hopefully we'll improve in that. We've got a squad full of sellable assets if the manager doesn't fancy them. And there's plenty of opportunity for growth in that team. And I just think the likes of Knutson, Areola, Graham Potter would take advantage of that. I know the other guy, AZ Alkmaar coach, Quinny, I can't quite remember his name, but he's been linked with it today. So apparently he's a young up-and-coming coach from the Eredivisie. So there's 4 names to watch out for. Well, 3 names. I couldn't remember the other one.
Yeah, I didn't know that, but the AZ manager, but they've been, I can't say I know who it is off the top of my head, but I know they've been doing well. So yeah, that's another one to throw in there. I think outside of that they're all quite uninspiring off the top of my head, as you say, a lot of the old names, and then it's like your Marescas and, guys from Mumbai and a few other bits and pieces besides that.
Buckingham Palace.
Yeah. But like you make a good point there. Like the squad is so attractive. Like I would hope that there's lots of really good applications to this. And I did a video on the channel early week, like going through a bunch of different names that were maybe on a bit of a wish list more than anything. But the squad is like covered in talent, covered in assets, really. And like we do have the ability to be really flexible under somebody new who says, do you know what,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to play with this type of midfielder, so I don't need these 3 guys anymore. Or you better sell that guy because he's never going to play and whatever.
Yeah.
And you can make those decisions early in the summer, and you can also then, fit the new team out the way it needs to be fitted out, with enough time. So I think the time of getting it done for the manager situation and for the transfer policy is probably one of the most important parts of it, with the quality of candidate we're maybe talking about, if it is one of those guys that get it. But is there any players you think are definitely leaving, or you're worried about us leaving, or I'm thinking about transfers out in particular here?
Players definite for me. Abada, I think he'll be going. I think he'll be one of the first out the door. I think, followed by Abada, I think we might lose Rio. Obviously, Brighton today lost Alexis McAllister to Liverpool for £35 million, and I think Rio may be a carbon copy of that type of player in that system. I know Brighton have been really interested in him, so I'd expect that to be reinitiated in the summer for Watate second. I have a really awful feeling that Postecoglou is going to come back in for Kyogo. Just for some reason. I mean, his quotes were very evident when he was on about he knows Kyogo could do it in any league in the world. Why would he change his mind at Spurs? And he brought him over here from Japan. Out with that, the biggest worry is Jota and Carter Vickers. Again, we're going to be naive to think that Jota's not going to attract interest. I have friends who are Liverpool fans and even United fans who would say they would take Jota. I think he's a superstar in the making. I think he's really coming on the game again after maybe a couple of months where he was off it, but he was hitting form towards the last part of the season. Carter Vickers maybe playing on their hands. He's injured until the start of pre-season again, or maybe I think it's September time. So maybe he'll get to January. But the definites are Abada, Rio, and my gut feeling says Kyogo. And that comes back to it, Quinny. If you're bringing in a different type of manager, they might want a different type of player anyway. And Postecoglou said it, and to be fair to him, don't get attached to your heroes. I think a mistake that we made before, especially in the COVID season, we were keeping Ayer, we were keeping Christie, we were keeping Edward, and it didn't want to be there. We need to learn from their mistakes, because once you keep players who don't want to be there, the attitude goes down, morale goes down, it affects the dressing room, it affects the team. And if you have 3 players in the starting lineup who aren't putting their weight, you're not going to win anything. So eventually, these guys are going to want to make their move. And at the end of the day, as you said, Quinny, as well, they're all young, they're all ambitious, their best is yet to come, and they want to explore different leagues, and that's fair enough. It's comfortable with me. Maybe in my younger years, I would have hated that fact, and why would anyone want to leave? We're Celtic Football Club. But if the Bundesliga, Serie A, La Liga, even the Saudis, by the way, them Saudis are signing some players. But if them leagues come calling, you're packing your bags and you're going. No question.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah. So I think Abada might actually stay. I think all the Abada chat has been. Whenever I've heard Abada talk about it, because Abada did a press conference towards the end of the season when he was coming back from being injured, and there had been some rumours around him. And I remember he did the press conference, and then he was like saying, like, I know I've still got to develop, and I'm happy here, and I want to keep pushing, da-da-da. I think he will probably... I think there was... Coming into this summer, I think there was quite likely the plan. We're going to lose, and I'm just going to say O'Reilly to say a name, right? We're going to sell O'Reilly this summer. It's unavoidable because of the interest. And do you know what? It would make sense if we could sell 2-3 other players. Name whoever you want, doesn't matter. And then that's probably the plan. Postecoglou leaving probably doesn't change that, but it probably does add on top of that is like maybe Kyogo and Rio and Dyson and Iwata, these guys have their head turned all of a sudden. And then you've got 4 additional players on top of that. You know, circle of guys that were meant to maybe be the business of the summer anyway, that was going to fuel the moves and keep the wheels oiled and all that kind of thing. But I actually don't think so. If you remember Ange's quotes, right, from when he signed Kyogo, he said he asked his defenders who the hardest striker was to play against in the J League, and he said every time Kyogo. If you ask the Celtic defenders that question, the answer is not Kyogo. The answer is Kevin Van Veen now. So I think that's probably your Harry Kane replacement, first of all. So Angel signed Van Veen for Tottenham. And then
that's a bold statement.
And then he knows like he can't sign Kyogo out Celtic because we'll lose our minds if that happens. But he knows if he signs Dyson Maeda, probably a lot of fans will probably be quite happy with him. And Dyson Maeda is quoted as being his son in some places, right? They've got that kind of proper. And I know he's got that with Kyogo now, right, and whatever. But Dyson, he's had that since Japan, So I could see actually him coming for Dyson and Iwata, because Iwata's just only got here. No one would care if he left, and he would probably quite like to have Iwata in his midfield, I would imagine. So I could probably see him maybe doing Dyson and Iwata. If I'm really crossing my fingers on that one, but I could see that.
You're kind of giving them the short straw there.
Well, but I could, and again, but if you think about it, he let Yokohama win the league, and then we signed Dyson Maeda in Christmas, and then he let them win the league again, or whatever, and then he signed Iwata. So I do think he'll come back for Kyogo, and he could come back for Rio, maybe, but like it might not be all at once, because he did treat the Japan team with a bit of respect. You'd hope he would maybe treat us with a little bit of that. But on that note, I want to throw a hypothetical at you to give you back the baton, if you like, right? If I could tell you right now, these are the 6 players that are going to leave Celtic, and this is the transfer fee combined total amount, right? Guaranteed, no matter what. The 2 options are they go to the interested clubs that were interested in them already, or all of them go to Tottenham. What would you pick?
Well, like, if all of them went to Tottenham, we would be up in arms. Let's be honest there. We'd be like, what's going on? That would be the biggest fire sale that ever happened in one transfer window from club to one club. If they go to their interested parties, I mean, Matt O'Reilly, Fabrizio Morano tweeted very early on, I think it was yesterday, that there's still interest and that could be initiated again in the summer. So I forgot to say him, actually, Quinny. I would expect bids to come in for him. Whether or not he goes, that's up to him. I would choose the interested parties, because I think that the way you have to look at this as well, the fans are angry enough at Postecoglou. Now, we do not want to go down the realms of calling them names and calling them things that shouldn't be said out of the heat of the moment or anger. So if Rio went to Brighton, if a Kyogo went to Spurs, if a Matt O'Reilly went to, I don't know, Lazio or something, just hypothetically saying they're interested, fair enough. We get decent fees in for them, we can rebuild the squad. The one thing that concerns me is, I think the days now of us getting these early transfers are done. That was forward thinking by Postecoglou. I don't think the board particularly liked it. Obviously, they're having to put the trust in him all the time and Japanese players. And to be fair, he came up 4 out of the 6 times, I would say, so far. So I think we need to pack that. We're not going to have the early exciting announcements before the window opens. That's gone. The next manager coming in is vitally important to me, Quinny. That has to be in the next couple of weeks. So he's there for pre-season. He can evaluate the squad quickly, and he can bring in the players he wants to bring in. And hopefully that's under a nice wee bank balance that we're brought in by maybe players going out, including the bank balance we have already. So, yeah, I mean, it's a good question to ask, but I think if 5 players went to Spurs, wow.
because what I think, right, is what if Ange would probably know all the players that the club would like to sell or is planning on selling or whatever, right? So let's imagine that's all a foregone conclusion. But like we always say, we always like to think about, or I don't know if we always like to think about, maybe some fans do, some don't, right? But would Celtic win the Premier League? Could Celtic be in the top 4? If they took our manager, and we know, and I say it's the same transfer fee, they're all going to leave anyway. It's a hypothetical. They're definitely these 5 players, 4 players, whatever number you want to think of, same transfer fee, and it's just interested parties or Tottenham. If Tottenham had a half Celtic team and finished second,
wow. But
like,
yeah, I get that. I get that. But I have to say what I said at the start.
Well, come sign for Celtic, and then we can sell players for then 40 million rather than 4 million.
It's hypothetically that sounds amazing. But see, at the end of the day, if Tottenham signed 4 or 5 players from us, I wouldn't care. They'd be an afterthought in my brain. If they finish second, it doesn't, for me, weigh to the argument that we would do well in the Premier League. We know we would. 2 to 3 years, we know as Celtic fans, we always get talked down to by like Jason Cundy and Goldstein and all these TalkSport pundits and say we're the backwater league. Give us the finances you get. Give us the riches you get. Put us in the league. Stop being scared. We'll be challenging. Are you trying to tell me the Celtic aren't bigger than Spurs? We're not bigger than the likes of City. We're not bigger than Chelsea. Do you know what I mean? If you take us as a global entity, I mean, for a Scottish club, by the way, Quinny, we're like the 49th, 50th most richest brand of a football team, which I think that's excellent. We're the only Scottish club on it, and that's something to be proud of. And you put us into that, and automatically you're getting what 900 million for TV revenue, whatever it is they get. You get the added cost of your season tickets going up because it's a premium league. Your players automatically raise in transfer fees. Doesn't matter if they're bang average. A Haksabanovic would go for 2 million in the SPL, but if you went to the EPL with us, it'd be 19, 20. Do you know what I mean? The massive bounty on their transfer fees alone would make us more attractive. And it's really naive. And I know I don't want to go off in a tangent and stuff, but it's really naive to think, and it annoys me that people don't believe if we were in that league, we wouldn't challenge. It's so ignorant. It's so blasé. It's so like, they're this or that. It wasn't so long ago we had a pretty decent record against most English teams in European competition. Do you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
I mean, we drew with Man City under Pep when Rodgers was in charge twice. They didn't beat us. In fact, we were the only team to take points off them at that moment in time. And then after them games, they started dropping points because they've seen how we played in that system against City and how we matched them up for them 2 games. So we can't compete. And if Spurs had a half Celtic side 20, if they won the league, happy days for them. Happy days for them.
Yeah, it's just a hypothetical I was thinking about earlier, and I thought I'd throw that at somebody. So good catch, well done. thanks for doing that with me. I appreciate it. So it was just a wee funny one that came to me. But it's probably, when we're talking, when I'm thinking about all this stuff, I always do get a bit pie in the sky, right? Because for me, supporting Celtic, the thing I love about it, winning trophies and trying to climb the league and all the rest of it, is what I've known for most of my life, right? But the one thing that I've always loved about Celtic, and what the magic of Celtic has always been, is the Lisbon Lions, is being indestructible at home in Europe, is the road to Seville, all of this stuff. That's the magic of Celtic, and that's the extra level. And I see fans all over the place, like constantly, like, oh, if we win the league next year, that'll do. And I can maybe get that in a crisis situation, but we are not in the same crisis situation we were in when Ange walked in the door, or even the shower situation, the Lennon one before. We're not in that crisis mode. I don't think we need to. Rangers will, they'll go and do some stuff, and they'll come back at us. And the league's so tight that it really does come down to the derbies, really, at this point. And again,
yeah, it does.
It is what it is. So that can be, that's a coin toss basically on paper, especially when you don't know who your manager is. But we should always have the aspirations for the club, whether it be, and me and you, I've had a great time with the podcast today. We've been into lots of different tangents about like the manager structure, the club structure, and roots, all sorts of stuff, because I know it's just the manager leaving, but it's the manager is, when he was there, a lot of these questions are quiet because it feels like all these things are being handled. Now that he's gone, no one has any real confidence that any of this stuff is going to be handled, really. And for us, like when I see fans then giving up on Europe already, man, we're guaranteed group stages. You know what I mean? We're guaranteed groups. We've got a transfer window. We've got a quality squad. So much is going our way. And when I see people writing off Europe already, like, man, it makes me sad, really. We're going into Europe next year. And I think like we should have ambitions, like we're regularly going to be qualifying at the top end of the league, right? As far as I can see it for the foreseeable. I don't see us dropping anytime soon. And UEFA are doing everything in their power to make the Champions League more money and more matches, which, and you might want to be football purist about it, which, we all do it sometimes, right? But we are one of the primary beneficiaries of that, really. The Premier League teams, see them getting an extra 20 million a year, it doesn't mean anything, but see to like us and Ferencvaros and Ajax and Bruges, that's like a pretty big deal, So like when, we are always going to be in that seat. It's going to get reformatted shortly. We've kind of touched on that before. And like, we really need to have the club, the players, the manager, everything, and the fans, I would say, like, we need to be all pulling in that direction of we are top 50 brand in the world. We are a top football club institution. And like, this is where we party. It's not Scotland. Scotland's where we get ready for the party, and then this is where we come for war,
I think as well, Quinny, like you make a great point. See the attitude of saying the league's enough. That's what the board want supporters to think and want supporters to believe. The penny pinching, the biscuit tin methods of the board are well known for the support. But at the end of the day, when we win the league, the clouds over the head, we don't think about I think that's an afterthought for the majority of fans. For me, it's not. I think Europe has to be where we make the point. You look at, I know we don't like to speak about it, but look at Rangers, right? They reached the Europa League final. Yeah, you might have got a rub of the green here and there, a wee bit of luck and stuff, but they've done it. Why can't we do something like that? You look at it as well. To be in Europe, we shouldn't be there to make up the numbers and be happy to take part and take home 30 million. That's the wrong attitude for me. I know the board are rubbing their hands at it and they're like, yes, we can release the annual accounts at Christmas time that the support will believe we're gonna spend £15 million on a player, we're gonna get more season tickets, get more of a waiting list, and then recycle it and do it all again. It's like a brainwashing method, which has done really well, to be fair to them. I looked at Europe under Ange as a total failure. That's for me. That was one of his downfalls, right? And you mentioned, to be fair to Ange, he probably took about 4 or 5 job roles on their manager. Like, he had to do the transfers, he was probably doing scouting. All that has to come into effect here. But the Champions League group previous there last year, I thought we should have done far better. Shakhtar games were winnable, RB Leipzig games were winnable, and then the Real Madrid games were free hits. We have to admit that now. I mean, we're not that forced no more. We can beat them at home or get a draw. That's no problem. They can deal with that. But the other two teams over 4 games, we should have took more than what we did off them. Then you look at, obviously, the Bolo Glimt with Knutson in charge. He totally took us to park and took us to school in terms of his tactics, and they destroyed us over 2 games. And that is where we need to improve. That's like the carrot dangling from the sky where we need to go on a run. We haven't won a knockout tie 2004 or something, which is absolutely, it's incredible. And you look at it, and you look at the teams like Club Brugge, you look at Ghent getting in there, you look at Ferencvaros, Sporting Lisbon, the Portos, Ajax. They do brilliant jobs in here. They get to the latter stages year on, year out. Obviously, different forms of European competition. Ajax, Champions League, Ferencvaros, Conference League.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But why can we not aim? See when you go, what annoys me, right? And the guys on my podcast will know this, is when you go and do the next podcast and we're like, oh, we've done well for 30 minutes, but ultimately we lost the game and didn't get any points. We mock Rangers fans for lifting these invisible trophies. It things like we hit the post against Real Madrid. There's a trophy for Callum McGregor for doing it. Doesn't matter. The final result is they win, we lose. We don't get no points for hitting the ball off the post or dominating against the Spanish giants for 30 minutes. Football doesn't work like that. It's farcical. But we need to compete more. We need to go into these group stages, whether it's Conference League, Europa League, and we need to believe in ourselves. It's not to be there to take part. When we laughed at them as for getting the worst draw or the worst point record in the Champions League. We weren't far off it. We had 2 points or whatever it was in the end. So that sense of reality here. Do you know what I mean? The Shakhtar games are winnable. The RB Leipzig games, maybe a win at home and a draw away. Why is that out of the realms of possibility? Do you know what I mean? We looked at that. Was it the FC Sheriff team?
League, you know?
Yeah. Was it the FC Sheriff team beat Real Madrid 3-0 at one point in the group stage? So, do you know what I mean? We're lifting the Callum McGregor trophy for hitting the post and they're beating them 3-0 in a 10,000-seater stadium. We need to get back into this spot where we're a European force. The league and the Treble's amazing. The dominate on a domestic level is fantastic. But if we want to be known as that world-class club and the ambitious club, we need to make our mark in European football. We really do, funny. It annoys me. It really does.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, man. Because as I say, like European football, I think is like Celtic identity is what we all love. We all love the club. We all love what it stands for and the identity of it. And there's no way that what separates us from the pack, a huge part of that is the European element of the club, you know, and like to deny that or diminish that, it makes me sad. You know, that's the only way of saying it, really, you know. So especially at this point, we're guaranteed groups, man. We've waited so long for guaranteed groups. We've had it 2 years in a row. We're going to probably get it next year if we keep going the way we're going, you know, fingers crossed, no jinxing. But like, you know, that's the best scenario you could hope for, you know, and this is when we can start to hopefully, if the club can, you know, use the Ange thing as a wake-up call, like, wow, we're not actually that far away from cracking this code of being a consistent group stage team that can turn over. Like you gave us an example of the turnover earlier, huge number, fantastic, right, and all the rest of it. But there's other clubs in the continent that have like rubbish, you know, like see if you look at the Portuguese league from 1 to 20 or whatever, how many numbers are in at 16. Same with all these other divisions across Europe. Austria as well is a terrible one for it. The league is rubbish outside of the top one, the top three, like, because it's just like Scotland in that sense. The only difference there is, see, in Salzburg, and all these places, they only give a fuck about themselves, right? In the sense
Yeah.
that we don't care that every our Scottish club only has 5 coaches. We're going to hire 20, and we don't
Yeah.
care that our squad size is meant to be 20. We're going to have 18, or whatever. And they just make sure that this works as good as possible at all times. And then when we go to Europe, and I know Salzburg haven't won anything, and some of these other clubs are having different ranges of success, right? But ultimately, for the club to do better, the club needs to make as much money as possible so we can keep these players for longer. We can say to Ange, we can say to players like, nah, you're staying, you're on this contract, or here's a better contract. We used to do that with players. Remember, like Larson was given
Yeah.
contracts to stay, and so was other players. We used to be able to do that,
It's
and they would want to
it's
stay.
forward.
We'd be like, you know what, we could get out the groups next year, and if we get out the groups, that's the beginning, and
Yeah,
that's
it's forward thinking, Quinny. You have
yeah.
to future proof the club and see the mad excuses here. Like, I don't understand why people say, "Well, do better next year because it was a learning experience." We're going to be in the group of probably different teams. That doesn't commend it, for my opinion. We're not going to be up against a Luka Modric or a Tony Kroos again. Do you know what I mean? So I personally think we need to take the opportunities when they arrive. We need to do well. We need to build the squad for European football. And then, as you said, Postecoglou said it, 5, 6, 7 years, consistent level in the Champions League. Whether or not we make it into the last 16 and all for that, but dropping down in the Europa League, give it a go. I mean, stop making excuses, being like, "Oh, I had to travel 400,000 miles, or it's in Kazakhstan," or do you know what I mean? Turn up, show up, and give the supporters what we want. I don't understand why the excuse culture has got so big within the fan base. It's baffling. It really is.
Yeah, this is Glasgow Celtic. So I think we're going to. I think the manager is the main variable that really everything is like in this vortex around, isn't it? Ambitions for next year, the transfer policy, who's coming, who's going, scouts,
Yep.
coaches. Because we're talking about people that have been brought to the club, but there's nothing saying they're going to stay. Like people leave the club all the time at this point. So like.
Yep.
We need that manager to come in, I think, as soon as possible. And then I think we can then start to see, okay, the club actually have a clue, or no, actually they don't.
Yeah, that's the next move's vital. We'll know if the board's ambitious, or we'll know again if the board is penny pinching. And with the names listed, I think we'll probably have our favourites. That's fair enough. I would still be along the lines of maybe a Potter or Rodgers with a get Areola behind him. Interview them, see what the crack is, but please God, Celtic, show a bit of ambition to the supports. I mean, we've backed them through and through. We've paid for season tickets in an empty stadium. We've sold out season tickets as well. So it's something that has to be done, in my opinion.
Stephen, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. I could keep you here all day and all night, I think, because out of all, throughout the summer, it's only going to rumble on further and deeper, mate, But as Celtic fans, we've got a lot to be hopeful for, and we've got a lot, not even hopeful, but a lot to be excited for. But it's fingers crossed on the next move, So whatever you're up to over the next couple of days, if you're enjoying the Champions League final, I think we all want to see Inter Milan lose Champions League finals. That's the way we like to see it.
Don't speak for me, Quinny.
But yeah, if you're watching the football, have fun. Stephen, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. Hail, hail.
Hail, hail, folks.